The NBA just gave two franchises that don't even exist yet the most powerful roster building tool in league history. An expansion team can draft a player, cut him before his bags are even packed, owe $0 on the cap, and still keep that first round pick they extorted for taking him. It's a cheat code written in the rulebook, and 30 teams are about to get shaken down by it. But none of that matters if the business case doesn't work. And for 20 years, that's exactly what was happening. Owners kept running the math on expansion, and the numbers kept telling them to hold off. Then the $76 billion TV deal closed, the Lakers sold for a record $10 billion valuation, and every owner was staring at a check for $500 million with their name on it. I'm your host Kyle, and welcome to Basketball Business. In today's deep dive, we're sharing everything you should know about NBA expansion front to back. Why it took forever for the 30 billionaire owners to say yes to a $500 million check, who profit from the expansion fees and why they exist in the first place, and probably most importantly, the expansion draft mechanics for when teams Seattle and Las Vegas will come to the league, the loopholes and trade mechanisms behind building a team, and why the GM hire might be the most important move they can make above all. Let's get into it. For as long as I've been a fan of the NBA, they've always talked about expanding ever since the Seattle SuperSonics relocated to Oklahoma City in 2008. But why now and not 5 or 10 years ago? Well, the answer is money. It's always money, but the sequencing of this money matters for why expansion took so long. During the 2020 and 2021 seasons, when the NBA had to cut their schedule because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they were in a major cash crunch. So people started throwing around the idea of adding 2 new teams and getting that expansion fee to cover the losses. But hold on a minute there, partner, the NBA said, because they had this big deal that they didn't want to mess with by adding 2 new teams. Their next national media rights deal. In July of 2024, they finally signed it for $76 billion over 11 years. Disney, Amazon, NBC, all paying to stream or broadcast games nationally. That locked in $6.9 billion a year in guaranteed revenue to the league and gave the 30 owners the one thing they needed to model expansion: certainty. Before that deal closed, you couldn't calculate what going from 30 to 32 teams would actually cost each owner in diluted revenue. Now you can, roughly $14 million per team per year. But then the sale started. The Celtics sold for $6.1 billion. The Lakers sold for $10 billion. The Trailblazers went for $4.3 billion, bringing up the floor of NBA team valuations. Each sale pushed franchise valuations higher, which pushed projected expansion fees higher, which made the math more favorable for existing owners to wait on expansion. The NBA was never going to expand and set those fees for expansion until they had fresh comps. And with the new TV deal and record sale prices for franchises raising the bar, now they are ready to rock and roll. And here's a piece that deserves more attention, especially in the context of the NBA expanding to 32 teams. Their own European league is farther along than what the public thinks. The league has been quietly building an international league in conjunction with FIBA, expected to launch by late 2027. Before domestic expansion hits. That additional revenue stream makes adding 2 new teams easier to absorb because the total pie is growing, not just getting sliced thinner. The NBA wanted Europe sorted first, and it sounds like they've got it. So why does an expansion fee exist at all? Expansion is pretty much selling equity in the league, and the fee covers that dilution in equity. When you go from 30 to 32 teams, every existing owner's share of national revenue drops from 3.33% to 3.13%. That fraction compounds over decades. The fee compensates for that dilution upfront. Here's a comparison. In 2004, The Charlotte Bobcats paid $300 million to join the league. The most recent team sale at the time, the Celtics, for a $360 million price tag in 2002. The Bobcats entered at 83 cents on the dollar compared to a recent sale. If you were to apply that same ratio to the Lakers' $10 billion sale, the expansion fees should land somewhere north of $8 billion per team. Reports are that the fees will be between $7 and $10 billion per franchise. So if both teams sell for a combined $15 billion, each existing owner pockets $500 million in straight cash. Those fees go straight to the owners. Not a single penny is shared with the players. Nothing goes in the basketball-related income account. Just a direct deposit of $500 million or so to 30 wealthy billionaire owners. But there's a ghost haunting this deal. In 1976, the Spirits of St. Louis got cut from the ABA-NBA merger. Instead of a $3 million buyout, the Silno brothers, who owned the team at the time, negotiated a perpetual cut of TV revenue from the 4 ABA teams that joined the league. The first check was for a measly $286,000. By 2010, they were raking in $17.5 million a year. Total take before they finally settled in 2014, roughly $800 million from a deal that looked like it was a rounding error when it was signed. The expansion fee has that same structural question. A $500 million check today seems enormous, but you're permanently diluting a revenue stream that has grown exponentially into billions of dollars for the past 50 years. Whether the owners come out ahead or not, it depends entirely on the discount rate that will use to be determined the expansion fee, which no one can agree on. If this kind of NBA business and finance content interests you, subscribe, because that's all we do here at Basketball Business, finding out how the off-court moves impact the on-court game. One more financial wrinkle that no one was expecting: Washington State just passed a 9.9% millionaires tax that will take effect in 2028, potentially months before the revamped Seattle SuperSonics start playing. They were previously one of 9 states that had no state income tax, a massive recruiting advantage that teams in Florida and Texas currently enjoy. Now, it's gone before it even started. Seattle Seahawks general manager John Schneider said agents were texting him immediately once the vote got passed, telling him he can't use that pitch anymore. For a max player making $50 million, that's roughly $2.5 million a year in new state income taxes on home games alone. Over a 5-year max deal, the gap between signing in Seattle versus no tax Nevada, Florida, or Texas could run $10 to $15 million. Las Vegas plays in no tax Nevada from day one. Seattle does not. That's the business case for why expansion is happening now. The money works for the 30 owners already in the room. But what about the 2 cities getting new teams? Seattle, they have a unified ownership group, an NBA-ready arena, and a fan base that has been waiting patiently for the past 18 years. Their biggest problem just got dropped onto them by their state legislator. Vegas is a different beast entirely. They have multiple ownership groups fighting for one singular bid, an arena situation that's way more complicated than people realize, and a legitimate question about if another professional sports team will cannibalize the existing sports and entertainment options that are already there. So let's start with the Sin City. 3 groups want the Vegas expansion franchise. 2 of them matter. Magic Johnson's group, called the MAGI, or maybe it's Magi, is the most visible. They're meeting with the governor, scouting arena sites, doing the whole 9 yards of the press circuit. Magic is great at this part, but his net worth is around $1.6 billion, and the expansion fee could hit $10 billion. That's like showing up to a Lamborghini dealership with Toyota Camry money. You need friends to help fund the purchase. So he's assembling outside equity, including Las Vegas-based billionaire Mike Bellin, but the financial structure of this group is still very much TBD. Bill Foley is the quieter play and probably the stronger one. He owns the Vegas Golden Knights, as well as 15% of T-Mobile Arena where they play, and has $300 million committed for NBA spec renovations there. This man bought an expansion hockey franchise for $500 million in a city that has never seen snow and turned it into a $2.1 billion Stanley Cup champion in 6 years. He spends to the salary cap every year. The third group, ran by LeBron James and Fenway Sports Group, are done. FSG saw the $7 to $10 billion fee and said, absolutely not. 2 days later, a reporter asked LeBron if he's still interested in owning an NBA team.
Is that still something big picture that you're interested in?
His $1.4 billion net worth was never going to carry a bid this size without FSG writing the real checks. So that dream is dead.
It ain't our ball. It ain't our ball. It ain't our ball. It's our ball, ain't it? It's our ball!
In every NBA market, the arena is the real moneymaker. You sell tickets, you sell beer, you sell corporate sponsorship signage, and hope to break even. In Vegas, it's the opposite. The arena is bait to make money in areas right outside of the arena. T-Mobile Arena is a proof of this concept. Built for $375 million with private money, it sits between two MGM properties. So a Vegas Golden Knight game lets out, fans walk directly into the casinos, restaurants, and bars that MGM owns on both sides. It's become the world's top-grossing arena for venues over 15,000 people capacity. MGM doesn't give a shit if the arena itself turns a profit because every event is a funnel pumping foot traffic into properties where the real margins live. That's not a sports business model. That's a casino business model with a hockey team attached to it. And right down the strip is an example of what happens when you don't do it. The Sphere is a living embodiment of how not to monetize Vegas arenas in the 21st century. James Dolan spent $2.3 billion building the most technologically impressive venue on earth and stacked up over $1.18 billion on operating losses before it finally turned a profit last quarter. Why? The Sphere sits on VC Properties land, where they own no hotels, no restaurants, and no casino. So when a concert ends, people walk out, and every dollar they'd spend for the rest of the night goes to someone who isn't James Dolan. He built the world's most expensive billboard for other people's businesses. It's a really cool arena though. Any NBA arena in Vegas without casino resort integration is just a very expensive Sphere with worse acoustics. The Cube, maybe? Foley's T-Mobile renovation is the fast path, cheapest and quickest, but the NBA team becomes a tenant in MGM's building. A new build gives you control, but costs billions to make and takes years of construction in a city that already has more cranes than pigeons. That tension will define who wins the bid. More tension I've been thinking about. Can the entertainment capital of the world support yet another professional sports team? The Golden Knights worked because they were there first. First major pro team in Vegas history. Cold arena in a hot city. Immediate success on the ice. They've sold out all home games in almost a decade of play. The Raiders work because scarcity does the heavy lifting with them. They have 10 home games counting preseason. Each one is basically a bachelor party with a football game attached. Opposing fans fly in from Dallas, Miami, and Chicago use the game as an excuse for a Vegas weekend trip, and owner Mark Davis gets to charge destination pricing. I did that exact scheme to watch Mac Jones take a safety and sell a parlay when my Patriots played in Vegas in 2023. The stadium fills up even though the Raiders have been mediocre at best since they moved to Vegas in 2020. An NBA team has 41 home games, many of them during the working week, against teams like the Wizards or Kings. You're just not selling a destination experience for an expansion team on a weeknight. You're competing against hockey, baseball when the A's show up, the Sphere, Adele's residency, whatever Cirque du Soleil show is running, clubbing and spending 6 figures on alcohol, gambling, and honestly, just the option of sitting by a pool because it's Vegas and that's free. Tourism has dropped 7.5% last year. The Metro is 2.4 million people in the 40th ranked media market. So why even bother? Because the bull case scenario has real upside potential to make Vegas one of the top 10 most valuable NBA franchises. Premium seats will be sold to high rollers and corporations running conferences. Casino comps will be subsidizing ticket prices so the resort makes it back on the floor. Star-driven opponent marketing where every Lakers or Warriors game sells itself and you package the rest of them. The Aces have proved that a winning team in Vegas becomes a genuine civic identity. AJ Wilson can't go to Target anymore without getting mobbed. If the NBA team is good early, the market will respond just like it did with the WNBA. The bear case is that you're asking locals who have infinite entertainment options to care about a basketball team that probably won't be good to start for 41 nights a year when they literally could just go gamble on the team instead. The tourists aren't flying to Vegas to watch you play the Pacers on a random Wednesday. They're flying to Vegas to do Vegas things and maybe catch a game if the opponent is interesting or the stars aren't sitting out. That's a fundamentally different demand curve than what the Vegas Golden Knights rose to multiple years of sellouts. If this kind of sports business insight is interesting to you, subscribe, because that's all we do here at Basketball Business. There are a few more expansion dominoes worth knowing about, starting with the Seattle ownership group and their arena dynamics. Basically, the group most likely to get the Seattle expansion team is the Seattle Kraken hockey team with a basketball jersey on. Samantha Holloway is running the show after inheriting the franchise from her late father, David Bonderman. Movie producer Jerry Bruckheimer is still involved because apparently producing Pirates of the Caribbean and owning hockey teams aren't enough hobbies. They have Amazon CEO Andy Jassy as a minority investor, and they also have the sons of former SuperSonics owner Barry Ackerley as bringing in historical continuity to that group. Climate Pledge Arena already has an NBA locker room built into the lower levels. They spent $50 million on NBA spec features during the $1.15 billion renovation. Arena CEO Todd Lewicki has publicly said they built it specifically to accommodate basketball. No competing Seattle ownership group has emerged. This is Holloway and the Kraken's bid to lose. Talking about conference realignment, when you add 2 teams to the West, that means there would be 15 teams in the East and 17 teams in the West as it currently stands. So you only need to move 1 team from the West to the East to balance the conferences at 16 teams each. There are 3 candidates to move: Minnesota, New Orleans, and Memphis, and Minnesota wins this argument easily, and it has nothing to do with on-court performance. 6 Eastern Conference cities are all closer to Minneapolis than Denver, which is the Wolves' nearest current Western Conference opponent. Memphis and New Orleans both have short flights to each other and the 3 Texas teams, which keeps them naturally connected to the West. This should really excite Wolves fans. Less travel, natural rivalries with Chicago and Milwaukee, and playing in a conference where 500 ball gets you to the playoffs, not in a dogfight in the play-in tournament. It definitely helps that they have an exciting young superstar in Anthony Edwards and a good supporting cast around him that would raise the profile of the Eastern Conference on-play product, but that's really a short-sighted estimation for why you should move a team to the Eastern Conference. This, in theory, is a perpetual move. If we were thinking about it, that framing and expansion was happening a few years ago, we would say the same for Memphis and Ja Morant. And now, look at them.
No one in the West.
Nah, I'm fine in the West.
Barring something unforeseen like trading Luka Doncic 9 months after he led you to the finals, the SuperSonics are back. The 2008 settlement, where the franchise moved to Oklahoma City, stipulated that the SuperSonics name, colors, logos, and history transfer to any new Seattle NBA team at no cost. So that means Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, the 1979 championships, all of it goes home. Oklahoma City retroactively becomes an expansion franchise with their history starting in 2008, the same way Charlotte reclaimed the Hornets history from New Orleans in 2014. We'll be doing a full video on the Seattle reallocation story soon because the leaked emails from Clay Bennett ownership group are genuinely insane. Quick cap nerd note: Expansion teams get excluded from the basketball-related income calculation and the salary cap divisor for their first 2 years in the league. In plain English, their entry doesn't mess with the salary cap for existing teams. The league watched and learned from the 2016 cap spike when TV money flooded in too fast and broke the entire free agent market. The reduced expansion cap, 66% in year 1 and 80% in year 2, plus these accounting exclusions exist to prevent a repeat like what happened 10 years ago. And I need to address this one because I keep seeing it. Expansion will water down the league and add 2 more bad teams when there's already a bunch of bad teams at the bottom. No, not at all. Those teams are purposely trying to be bad. They have good players and they're just not playing them. Utah is sitting starters in the 4th quarter of games they're winning. Washington has cap space and won't spend it, and their stars mysteriously re-aggravate injuries when they play other tanking teams. The Pacers aren't bad because there's no talent available. They're bad because being bad is the optimal strategy under current lottery rules. Meanwhile, the international pipeline is wider than it's ever been, players are healthier and playing longer, and you've got guys in Europe and Australia right now who would be rotation NBA players today if those spots existed. 2 expansion teams aren't diluting anything. The talent pool has grown faster than the league has. If you want to fix the bottom of the standings, fix the incentive to tank. So that's the landscape. Vegas has the money and the entertainment infrastructure, but a real question about whether being the 5th professional sport in a city of 2.3 million actually works on a Tuesday night in January. Seattle has the arena, the ownership group, and 18 years of pent-up demand, but a brand new state tax that puts them at an immediate free agent disadvantage against their expansion twin and no tax Nevada. Neither situation is as clean as the headlines make it seem. Now both teams have to actually build their rosters, and the CBA gives them tools that, in the right hands, are borderline unfair. There's a provision that lets an expansion team draft a bad player on a bad contract, waive him before opening night, and owe $0 against his salary cap. Stack that on top of protection rules that force teams to leave quality players exposed, and you got the setup for something between aggressive negotiation and a shakedown.
Where's my money? Where's my money? Yeah, you got money to pay for fake mustaches, huh? Yeah, how much you pay for that fake mustache?
The negotiations that will go on during the expansion draft will be taught in business schools. So let's go ahead and talk about what they're going to do when it actually comes. The CBA sets expansion teams at 66% of the standard salary cap in year 1. If the cap projects at $183 million, that's roughly $122 million that they have to play with. But they still have to spend 90% of that, so their floor of minimum salaries is about $110 million. The termination credit says if you select a player in the expansion draft and waive him before opening night, his salary doesn't count against your cap, but it does count to the spending floor. You still have to pay the guy, but you eliminate all the team building financial restrictions that come with having a bloated contract on your roster. So let's imagine the expansion draft was this year and Philadelphia wants out of the $54 million Joel Embiid Supermax. He's 34 years old, injury ravaged, and currently untradeable as it stands. But he still has a lot of talent and marketability to offer, so he's a perfect candidate to dump on the new Seattle SuperSonics. The expansion GM calls Daryl Morey and says, "We'll take him, but you gotta send us your 2029 first." They select Embiid and immediately waive him. His $54 million counts to their $110 million floor. That's half the spending requirement satisfied by a player who will never wear the jersey. And his salary counts 0 against the cap. They still have to pay him $54 million, but that $54 million isn't being counted toward their luxury tax calculations. The expansion team still has their entire $122 million in salary room to sign actual players. And they do it again. Take Jeremy Grant's $32 million from Portland. Get their 2030 first. Waive him too. You're now at $87 million towards the floor for 2 guys who aren't on your roster, and you've collected 2 extra first-round picks, and your cap sheet to sign more players is completely clean. Do this scheme again with 1 more mid-tier salary, and you now have hit the salary cap floor with 0 committed cap dollars, a war chest of draft picks, and the most favorable salary cap situation in the entire league. There is a catch, however. You have to carry at least 14 players from the expansion draft itself. So you can't waive everyone. The real play is 3 or 4 termination credit candidates with the biggest, most bloated contracts you can find, paired with 10 or 11 guys you actually intend to keep. If this kind of content about team building schemes is interesting to you, subscribe, because that's all we do here at Basketball Business. We got really into the details of one trick expansion teams can use to build their team, so let's zoom out and talk about the expansion draft itself. Based on the 2004 Charlotte Bobcats precedent, which is the template the CBA references, each existing team protects 8 players. Anyone not protected is eligible to be selected. An expansion team can only take 1 player per franchise. Restricted free agents can be protected, but if they're selected, they become unrestricted immediately. The expansion team also gets a slot in the first round of the NBA draft, likely in the top 5, though historically, expansion teams have been locked out of the #1 pick for their first few seasons. Contending teams often have 10 to 14 players they genuinely want to keep, but they can only protect 8 of them. The expansion team's general manager's leverage is simple. It's like a mafia member. They can go to a team and say, "Hey, you left that nice player unprotected. I'm gonna take him, unless you give me something to not take him." Using this season as an example, Oklahoma City is the richest target in the league. They got SGA, Chet, Jalen Williams, Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace. 6 very solid locks. Now they're sweating over Lou Dort, AJ Mitchell, the other Jalen Williams, and Nikola Topic. They can only save 2 more of those guys. The expansion GM calls up Sam Presti and says, "That's a real nice AJ Mitchell you got there. 23 years old, handy playmaker, very reasonably sized contract. It'd be a shame if you were to lose him. But send us a pick and we'll take someone else so you can guarantee you won't lose him." Sam Presti and Oklahoma City have the picks to pay that ransom. They're sitting on a historic war chest of draft capital. But there's a game theory wrinkle on the other side. Only 1 player can be taken per team per the current expansion draft rules. So if Seattle takes AJ Mitchell or whoever the next young Thunder stud is, Las Vegas can't also pick from OKC. So does Presti pay off 1 expansion team with a pick and gamble with the other? Or does he trade young players before the expansion draft to consolidate value and remove the leverage entirely? In the 12 to 18 months before the expansion draft, smart front offices will make moves to get their roster down to 8 core players rather than risk losing guys for nothing. I'm looking at Brooklyn, sitting on 5 first-rounders from the 2025 draft, all entering their final rookie year deal in 2028-29 season as the most obvious consolidation candidate. Package 3 young guys and picks for 1 established player who locks into a protection slot. Once they announce when the expansion draft is and the rules and restrictions behind it, that will reshape the trade market immediately. The NHL has proved all of this mafia-type scheming works. In 2017, Vegas Golden Knights general manager George McPhee extracted 3 first-round picks, 2 seconds, multiple prospects, and several legitimate players through side deals alone on top of his 30 expansion draft selections. 15 players on Vegas's championship roster traced directly to the expansion draft transactions. They made the Stanley Cup Finals in year 1, a record for any expansion team. 4 years later, Seattle Kraken general manager Ron Francis ran the same scheme but got 0 deals. They had the same rules and same protection format as the Vegas Knights did in their expansion draft. But Ron wound up setting his price floor too high, and teams were better prepared for the mafia-type extortion. The lesson here is that leverage for expansion teams exists on a structural basis, but putting it into practice and extracting value requires shrewd negotiations that are both flexible and aggressive. That's why whomever each expansion team hires as their first ever general manager will be the most consequential decision either team makes. That's the expansion draft, a mechanism that looks straightforward on paper, but becomes an absolute arms race once real GMs start working the phones. We'll be tracking every preemptive trade, every protection list leak, and every side deal rumor as this unfolds over the next 2 years. And coming soon, a deep dive on how the Sonics lost their franchise in the first place. 18 years of the Sonics in exile, the arena politics, the leaked emails and backroom deals. It's one of the wildest stories in NBA business history, so make sure you're subscribed to Basketball Business to be the first to know when it drops. Thanks for watching this deep dive on everything you should know about NBA expansion. If you enjoyed or learned something new, please like and share with someone you think would enjoy. Let me know in the comments who you will protect in an NBA expansion draft. Subscribe to Basketball Business for more great videos on how the off-court money moves shape the on-court game of basketball. Until next time, this is Kyle with Basketball Business.